So it's been around 6 months since the 15-inch MacBook Air was released. You can now often find on sale for much less than retail price. It's going for around $1,100/pounds. So should you consider buying this at the current price, or should you wait for the M3 refresh around the corner? Well, let's delve into my long-term experience. For many years, I've wanted a larger version of the MacBook Air because I personally find the base level chips plenty good for my use, and so if I could get the larger screen the 16-inch offers without the additional cost, it would be perfect. And this offered exactly that. Now let's first cover the two big advantages the 15-inch has compared to the 13-inch, and that begins with the display. Back when I was testing the M2 MacBook Air 13-inch, I noted the increase from 13.3 inches on the M1 to 13.6 with the M2 did not make a huge difference in terms of regular usage, and I wasn't really gaining any additional real estate, to be honest. I'm happy to say though that as one expects, the 15.3-inch panel on this machine does make a difference, and particularly for editing I've massively appreciated having the larger display. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. But obviously I know many are likely not going to be editing on this, and so the bigger display does make a difference for most of you guys when watching content on this, and also when multitasking. If you use split screen, having a lot more space to work with is pretty handy, and because it's an Air, I don't think you're compromising much weight-wise, because the 15-inch might not be as compact as the 13-inch, but it's a lot less bulkier than the 16-inch, and really brings the best of both worlds like I always wanted. Anyways, coming back to the display, the specs of it are not particularly special, I can't lie. It lacks mini LED and 120Hz, but I actually don't mind the lack of these features. Apple's LCDs are very solid, it offers P3 support with 500 nits of brightness, and True Tone as well, and well, this essentially is the same display Apple's been using for years on MacBooks, and as someone who's been using an M1 MacBook Air for 3 years, I'm sure most are going to be more than fine with the panel on this. The second big upgrade with the 15-inch over the 13-inch are the speakers. This has 6 of them compared to 4 on the smaller size, and also include, and I quote, force-cancelling woofers, whatever that means. But yes, the larger chassis with the additional speakers does make a big difference, and it's a treat to kick back and watch movies on this, especially with a larger display. This undoubtedly is a big selling point for this machine, and here's a sample for you guys. So those are the two things that swayed me to the 15-inch, but because it's based on the already fantastic 13-inch, the overall package here is very solid. Beginning with the design, yes, I do miss the wedge design the M1 model had, but apart from that, it's a design that works, and it's crazy how thin this is. I also like the rounder corners this has compared to the M1 model because the sharper corners with the older design does scratch and dent pretty easily, and also the notch doesn't put me off, guys. I usually forget it's there. Also, side note, this silver is gorgeous. I know everyone's probably still going gaga for midnight because it's the fancy exclusive color for the Air, but guys, I much prefer the classic silver. Now moving to performance, this gets the 10-core version of the M2 standards, and as one expects, performance has been great. Now I know we just got new shiny M3 Max, and yes, on paper those have bigger numbers. Who'd have known a newer chipset's faster? But here's the thing, guys, M3 at the end of the day is just your typical year-over-year spec refresh, and so when it comes to regular usage, the 15-inch MacBook Air performs just as well as the 14-inch M3 MacBook Pro in my experience. Obviously, I can't speak for everyone, I'm only basing this on my usage, which is 4K video editing every single day alongside the usual mix of emailing, writing up documents and also scripts, and also watching YouTube and movies on this. And so for my kind of usage, I really have not picked up any huge difference. So don't be put off by the fact the M2 Air is fanless, it doesn't throttle that much. These machines are still very, very powerful. I mean, I've been using an M1 MacBook Air for 3 years, that's also fanless, and I've had 0 issues. So do not buy the M3 MacBook Pro thinking performance is going to be substantially better, because that's really not the case. I do also want to mention that I got the base model, which is the one most are going to get, and as was the case with the 13-inch, Apple has made the SSD slower on the base 15-inch. Now, does it suck Apple's doing this? Yes, absolutely, but are you going to realistically pick up on a massive difference? Honestly, no, and I'm coming from an M1 MacBook Air that has the faster SSD, but genuinely guys, I've had zero issues from the SSD speeds. This issue has definitely been overblown, but if you're still bothered by this, you can now actually find a 512GB model on sale for around $1,200 or less, and so if you want the better SSD, definitely get that instead. And the RAM situation did really surprise me because I got the M1 Air with 16 gigs, in case 8 gigs was not enough for editing, but no, I've actually not had a pop-up yet saying I've run out of RAM on the 15-inch, and there's been no issues with the memory swap because of the slower SSD in this. However, I will say that RAM will help with the longevity of the device, and so it can be beneficial in the long run, so I do recommend still upgrading this if you're not on a strict budget. Moving to the webcam, it's respectable, but do remember it's still a webcam. I remember getting excited about the upgrade to 1080p back when the 13-inch released, but it's really not that much better than the old 720p sensor on the M1. I think that's because the ISP with the M1 made up for the lack of resolution with the older sensor, so ultimately guys, the moral of the story is webcams suck, and so while it's fine for Zoom calls and the occasional FaceTime session, you probably want to use continuity camera instead if you want the crispiest footage. The mics, however, are very solid, as is the case for most Macs. I've been told by friends I sound crisp and clear when I do the occasional Discord call on this, and here's a sample of that for you guys. And here's a webcam test for you guys. I should sound pretty good. The visuals should be decent enough. So yeah, let me know how this is. The keyboard is also fantastic. I know some have mentioned these new Macs have mushier keys compared to the M1, but that's not the case. These M2 Macs are still very solid. The trackpad is also perfection. Every time I use a Mac, I come to appreciate how incredible Apple's trackpads are, because when I used to use Windows laptops, that was one thing that sucked consistently on all of them, and it seems Apple's really the only manufacturer that can nail this part of the laptop experience. Touch ID has also been ever reliable, and because this has Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.3 support, I've had zero issues connectivity wise. Coming to ports, this actually has been a game changer for me compared to the M1 Air because this has MagSafe. Now, it's actually not to do with the fast charging or the fact it gives you a very satisfying magnetic connection that easily comes off, but it's more to do with the fact I now essentially have an extra port. You see, with the M1 Air, I would have to use one port for charging, and so only one other port would be left for peripherals, which would be a tad limiting. With the 15-inch, however, I can use MagSafe to charge it, and then the two USB-C ports are free for peripherals, and so I do greatly appreciate this. The battery life is an aspect that's also been very good. I was editing on this Mac for 2 hours, and it went from 100% to 87%, which is just incredible. Back when I was using Intel, they would be close to dead once I finished editing for 2 hours, and so this is easily the best thing about Apple Silicon Macs. They last forever, and so for regular consumers, you're gonna love this about the 15-inch. Battery health is also 100% months later, which is nice to see, though to be fair guys, I keep it plugged in most of the time, so it makes sense. So those are basically all my thoughts regarding the 15-inch MacBook Air, and I've been impressed by this. I absolutely love the larger display and the great speakers, and they make a big difference for what I use a MacBook for, but of course, it's still portable and razor thin like the 13-inch, and the performance on this base model has been surprisingly good. So if you are on a tight budget and you can't spend the extra on the RAM and storage upgrades, the base model should be fine for most consumers. This is now very much my go-to recommendation for most consumers. You're probably wondering though, the 15-inch is getting massively discounted right now, so should I buy this and not wait for the M3 refresh in the spring? And honestly, I would say that yes, if you do need a MacBook, buy the M2 model right now, because I've tested M3 in the MacBook Pro and it's not that big of an upgrade. And do remember, that's literally the only thing changing. The M3 models are going to be the same in every other aspect. So for the prices you can now find the 15-inch M2 for, it's undoubtedly worth getting, because the M3 model won't be getting similar discounts till this time next year. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.